Right now, we'll be kicking off the creative and builders track for the afternoon. Our first speaker, DotSimulate, he is somebody who I've gotten to know in the past 6 months, and through a bunch of events, and especially through his monthly Dot Lab event, which I would say like a mix of visual presentations and tech talks and rave party. I've never met anybody who is so well loved by a community. So as an example, when he recently released his LOPS operator for Touch Designer, the community literally had a surprise ribbon cutting ceremony for him.
That was great.
Which was awesome. He's a pioneer in creative AI, and he's an author of StreamDiffusionTD. And I think his approach to community building is a big inspiration for us as we're building the Daydream community and the Comfy UI community in New York. So please give a warm welcome to DotSimulate.
Thanks so much, Eric. And to the Live Peer team, to the venue, all the speakers, and everyone for being here. This has been super fun so far. Also, really incredible to hear from Chen Feng and all the people here this morning. You guys are incredible, and you've done so much for myself and my community, and so many artists. It's very empowering and very cool to see what's coming next. Today, I guess, there's me. I'm going to be talking about integrating Stream Diffusion into TD, Touch Designer, and what I learned about building tools for other artists, and kind of leaning into this collaborative feedback group within a group, or feedback loop within a group and a community. A bit about me: I've been building tools for Touch Designer for about 3 years now that integrate with various AI models, starting all the way back with Stable Diffusion, if you remember that one. And more recently, diving deep into building a modular system with LLMs, like Eric mentioned, LOPS. Also, Automatic 1111, Comfy UI, Music Gen, some text-to-video stuff. Basically, I've tried to make every pipeline that I can find and that I want to play with, and I put it in Touch. Touch Designer itself, these are a couple of the tools. If you want to scan that QR code real quick, it'll also be at the end of the slideshow. But TD is, for those that don't know, a real-time node-based modular interface that you can pretty much connect anything to anything. It can connect sensors to cameras to lasers. You'll see a little bit about that in the next presentation. And it creates a pretty unique environment for creative programming. You can also use Python to automate and control any aspect of the program, which is pretty awesome. And that was my first introduction to just programming in general in Python, if I don't count Vex with Houdini. But all that being said, I come from more of an artistic background than a computer science background. I've dabbled in a ton of different art forms from I was in a band, and then I recorded our first project, so that was my first foray into Ableton. I forced myself into projection mapping and theater in college, and that was my first foray into animation. So a lot of the things that I've done has been my first venture into that field, and that's kind of where I'm comfortable, strangely enough, but I like doing new things. So, Stable Diffusion. Back in 2022, when it came out, I didn't have much experience with Python, other than the fact that I knew I could do it in Touch. So basically, I think the day that it came out, or the day after, by then I had this pretty janky interface in Touch that basically just compiled a CLI command, copied it to my clipboard, opened the CLI, and then I would paste it. And that was I was great, now I can actually run the Stable Diffusion model. I didn't really know about Google Colabs or anything at that, or no, I did. I was running Centipede Diffusion. But this was a pretty impactful moment for me because within 24 hours, I had my own modular system running, and it was a UI that I could build and iterate on. Then we have Deforum. Also, I put all of my titles on the bottom right, so they're right under me. It's great. But Deforum, for all of you that might remember, was this incredible loopback system. So it would take the output, feed it back to the input, and then run a Stable Diffusion pass with 80 different parameters you could change, and you could also schedule them over time. So that was also in a Google Colab notebook, and that interface is lacking. So I kind of analyzed the keyframe format and took that and built this huge system in Touch at the top right there. The slightly simpler version is in the bottom right, but I'm using a game controller, and I'm zooming in and recording the keyframes in real time, and then I can copy and paste all those formats into Deforum. And then you can see like kind of the previs on the left, and then 3 different outputs where I was like testing different settings. So all this being said, I'm basically building an interface for me to feel like I have my hands on the controls and I can really like iterate and feel ownership over that work. And then came Automatic 1111, which was kind of like the first way that people were really getting deep in it with Stable Diffusion. And I was really into Deforum. I wanted to just do that in Touch Designer. So I built an even crazier network, which is here. And this was actually for a music video I did for Absol, which was super fun, and just like, they gave me full creative freedom to do like 90 seconds of footage where I was zooming through all of these like black and white imagery. You can see a little bit of here, that's like super zoomed through the timeline, but built this huge timeline tool that could go through different prompts, and it was awesome, but I was waiting 20 to 30 seconds per generation for like the high quality ones. If I really optimized it, maybe 1 second or so. I just need to start my timer, oops. And all this being said, you got some timers up there in the front. It was taking like, what, like 1.5 seconds, and I think that was a faster model. But at this point, I had released a couple tools on Patreon. That was kind of where I, as an artist, was following some other people. So it's like, that was almost like my GitHub. I was like, all right, I'm going to share it with people. I'm going to put it on Patreon. That's what people do. And that started forming a community. And there was a lot of talk of just like, you know, it'd be cool if this was like real time, like Touch Designer normally is. Because like everyone was like, what are you doing with Touch Designer? You're creating like this rendering system that generates a frame every 10 seconds. It's like not the way normally people use it. They'll use it. Also, the idea of like Deforum and this feedback loop is very key to Touch Designer. So a lot of like the particle effects and these weird displacement, it all has to do with bringing the output, putting it into the input, but that usually runs at 60 FPS. So you can get really cool particle effects, but 0.1 FPS, we're not getting there. However, then StreamDiffusion came out a couple months later, after just iterating the heck out of all these Deforum-like Touch Designer things, and then all of a sudden, like overnight, there it is. It's in real time. This is what we wanted. Yeah, thank you for anyone here that worked on that paper. So, me being me, I was like, cool. I think I ran the web interface. Like, I was doing some Python outside of Touch at that point for sure. So I got the image-to-image example running. And I was like, cool. I want to control this. So I took the whole pipeline and hooked it up, every parameter to OSC signals, so I could control an external Python process. And I also was getting a lot of feedback from the community. Some of it was like a lot of installation errors, CUDA dependency errors. They're like, it doesn't even work on my GPU. And I was like, oh, true. I guess I've only been thinking about my 2070. But they also led me to get like prompt travel and seed travel, which this is only one seed here, but also in this bottom right, you can see I made this little UI that I think when I click, it started like looping through the different prompts. You can see that it's like, yeah, it's fun. But yeah, I also want to say thank you for anyone that has ever given me a bug report, because that is so valuable for someone, especially like me, who didn't think about how releasing this tool means that I'm going to become a like CUDA pip compatibility like person. And eventually, after like 3 months, I got like a nice thing. I was like, you have to use 11.8 or 12.1, but if you use that, it should work on every PC. So there's like so many aspects about building these tools that I didn't expect. It's like, cool, tech support. It's kind of fun. Yeah, that's all I'll say. So adding more features. So then there was also like open source with StreamDiffusion. It's awesome. But there was kind of a lot of like floating forks. So there was like a fork that had ControlNet implemented. There was a fork that had ControlNet with only TensorRT implemented. V2V was out, which was like, I was like, I would love to integrate that. It took me quite a while. But I think the one on the right is using V2V and ControlNet. And then I think the one on the left is just using ControlNet. But that you can see the depth ControlNet going in, and then me in my bedroom. So, I mean, for kind of most of it, I just want to show off some really awesome examples from the community. This is an artist named Patrick.txrx, who has done a lot of like these hardware and physical installation setups. And they feel like sketches. And he's posted like a lot more than this on my Discord. And I'll say this again, but thanks to everyone who's ever shared any outputs using my tool. It's incredibly inspiring to see all of the countless things that I wouldn't have ever thought of that have been done by all these artists. Christian Brinkman has done some awesome, also, like physical installations where I really appreciate when people take the stream diffusion thing and kind of turn it into like a texture generator, or maybe they're putting into a particle effects, because you can use it as almost a render engine or like a texture generator, and it doesn't have to be just an image filter. Or basically, it doesn't have to be at the very end of your pipeline. It can be in the middle. This guy, Scotty Fox, one of the original Deforum devs, shout out to him. I remember when I was on the Deforum Discord, he was like, looks like we have a touch designer user when I posted one of my things, and I was like, how'd you know? But he's done some awesome examples with Stream Diffusion. I really like this X-ray thing. I think that's also using MediaPipe. This guy has done a ton of, like, he's kind of really taken it and like ripped my code out and put his own code in. And this is a super fun project where he was using it with ControlNet to projection map this like cake. And I think it was at this like anniversary party or something, but he had this whole modular interface that people could, at the party, I think it was maybe a little more refined, but maybe not. And he could control the looks, and he's just had a bunch of cool experiments. I don't know what the one on the left is, but he's using like some sort of vector flow displacement. It's very fun. But yeah, touch itself, you can quickly build these like simple modular interfaces. And it's especially fun when it like comes into the touchscreen arena. Some community examples of like at larger events. I've seen a ton of examples of this at like large festivals, and it's always super fun to see like a large group. Like someone texted me, they were like, I had this on a 40-foot wall, and like it encouraged people to dance because they could see themselves like vaguely in the imagery. So another way to bring a different community in, which is just like the people that are experiencing the art, not the users of the art, of the like tool. This is just some really awesome kind of another way where you take the image and you're kind of doing a little compositing and adding like these like VFX 3D lines. I just thought this guy's output was super cool. And some other ones, Chris Mills, shout out, he's in the building. Super fun, giant LED wall that I would have loved to see in person. And yeah, especially when it comes into like the touchscreen aspect in the middle, I think might be a little abstract, but you can bring these models into an interface where you can really get physical with them. And that's when it starts to feel really special, in my opinion. And then, yeah, Vanya with the crazy AV stuff. He's always like ripped Stream Diffusion, just made the most insane, weird, fast-paced visuals with his crazy graphics cards. It's fun. Another couple just like really fun, kind of unique examples. I love this little Lego thing. This is on a display that's actually 3D. So he's rendering out 60 different camera passes in Touch Designer and compositing them on this display, which I'm forgetting the hardware company name, but Looking Glass, yes. I know people that work there. It's a great company. And then I hate Max trained Allura on his face and just had like a head model rotating, and I was like so fun. That was like super early, like a month after I had released it. And yeah, so a bit on just reflecting on kind of like what I learned after building this tool, putting it out. There is a version where I could have kept this tool close to myself and tried to get a bunch of client work. I'm very glad that I didn't, because I don't know how I would have gotten connected with those clients. And it's been very cool. At this point, it's almost been out for 2 years, and I've seen thousands of people iterate on it in hundreds of ways that I didn't think of. The next presentation is like a really cool deep dive of some crazy stuff that I would have never thought of, which is laser mapping. And it's very cool to see people kind of stretch and push it into different corners of what it can do. And another very cool thing, I kind of talked about like finding these tools, breaking into the interface, and feeling like I had a little bit of ownership over that. I think that's important in the open source community, is like these tools are really powerful because you give permission for people to riff on them, and you're not necessarily positing it as like a black box magic button, which I think those like arguably have their place in this like AI world and like more of a product. But if you're building a tool that wants to be almost like a playground that you're trying to inspire someone to build on and iterate, I think exposing all those parameters and just like letting them play is the direction that I like to lead. And I think a lot of technical artists really appreciate when you give them like the agency, especially the agency to break it, because that's where you find the coolest stuff. Yeah, this goes into that, but at this point, Stream Diffusion has turned into, what, 8 parameter pages? Some of them are just oriented around installing, trying to make that a little bit easier for people, but I've pretty much took every part of the pipeline and tried to expose it so that they have direct control in exact real time, 60 FPS. The inference time might not be that fast, but for me, in my artistic journey, this is what I would have wanted, so this is why I built that tool. And then, yeah, community is key, because I would not have made version 2, maybe, if I hadn't gotten complaints about CUDA installs, or they hadn't pointed out that I had a memory leak only in the NDI and not the spout stuff. I'm using shared memory now, it's better. But all of these things, and like I was saying with like basically almost collaborating with 1,000 people riffing on a tool that I made. And at the end of the day, I found myself then just kind of developing on it, and I play with it to test it, but like my process almost became shaping the tool and shaping the interaction between the user and something that I wanted to build previously. And that's just a very interesting position to be in. I never really thought of myself as I'm going to build software. I was like, I'm going to write some plays and maybe direct some TV shows or something eventually. But maybe I'll do that too. But there are ways with this technology to provide that like narrative exploration for other people. And interactive art is just super cool. So a bit on like what's next. I've been working with LivePeer and also LivePeer in general, their team. Ryan's going to talk about this, but they've been really pushing Stream Diffusion, the original release, to the max. Everything's TensorRT. We got IP adapter. I'm not going to spoil too much, but all of that stuff is going to be in an upcoming version of the Touch Designer plugin. I'm doing like a V3 release. I did like V2 with like some control net improvements and stuff last year, but this will be like a full back-end replacement. Everything TensorRT, SDXL plus IP adapter is super fun. This one on the top is very abstract, but it's like audio reactive, and like all of those flickers are only possible with the SDXL and the fidelity that model brings. And then also Daydream, for those people that don't have like a massive GPU, which at this point, you kind of need the 24 gigs if you're going to want to fit TensorRT plus control net. So V3 will have parity between the hosted backend and the local backend. So you can pretty much test, even if you want to do local for your final version, you can iterate and test using the Daydream hosted backend in the coffee shop on your Mac. And yeah, it's very cool to be working with them and like pushing this to the max for people. And also, I think soon, a little StreamDiffusion v2 and other world model pipelines will be brought into touch by the awesome work with Scope, because that's just super modular backend. I'm excited to contribute on with that and hopefully open it up a little bit for some more creative applications. I also see the power of just bringing that UI into touch. I was talking to Yandin a little bit earlier. It's a very exciting time. And I guess, nope, that's the wrong direction. We're not there yet. Let's see, what else did I want to cover? I could open up for questions. No one's really done that so far, but yeah, I think that's pretty much most of the stuff. Like these AI tools, like I said, or these pipelines that you're exposing to artists, I would say are definitely the most fun to play with when you expose all the controls and give the power to the person to feel like they can riff and have ownership. It's crazy to think a year and a half ago, I was waiting 30 seconds for the renders with the forum, but now I can do similar and almost way more abstract things in real time, runs at like 15 to 20 FPS with the feedback loop in there, and I can iterate so much faster, and I can only imagine as things get more powerful that this just becomes a compounding like ability to collaborate with these models. But yeah, that's it. I'm DotSimulate everywhere online, and StreamDiffusionTD and my other tools is on my Patreon, and I'm incredibly inspired by all the people here, and thank you.